So, with just a couple of days to go before Battlefield 5 goes live for Origin Access Premier subscribers on Friday, DICE is releasing a little bit more information about the launch maps and some of the game modes included. I know a lot of you have been asking me when I'm going to release some more Battlefield 5 gameplay. I've been in Stockholm for the last few days at the launch capture event. I can tell you, gameplay will be posted up at 5 AM Pacific time on November the 8th. And I'll be posting some awesome gameplay on a map that we haven't seen really proper gameplay from yet, and it's with a weapon I know a lot of you will be very interested in seeing in action. Look out for my video going live then. I'll have some sponsored videos going live as well. I work with EA to produce some beginner tutorials for Battlefield 5, and they'll be going up at some point on the same day. But for now, let's dig into this latest Dev Talks episode because there is some really interesting information to discuss and a few things that can really help set Battlefield 5 apart from previous titles in the franchise. Each game that's released has its own direction, its own influence, but it seems this time around that DICE is really listening to fan feedback from the past few titles and is trying something different here. First of all, certain game modes and game mode variations will only be accessible on certain maps. This means that although there are 8 maps in the game, not all of them support every single game mode, and instead DICE is choosing to have modes on maps where things actually work properly. This goes against the previous direction where, regardless of the map layout and its experience that it was offering, every single game mode in the game would be put onto it, sometimes shoehorned onto it where it really didn't fit. The reason for this change is overly simple. It's to improve gameplay every time you join a match. If a map doesn't suit a certain game mode, then invariably you're going to end up with a worse gameplay experience. DICE is ditching that possibility in Battlefield 5, and I think that is a really good move. Most of the launch maps in Battlefield 1 were designed with the Operations game mode in mind. That's now called Breakthrough in Battlefield 5, and despite that, some maps had Conquest shoehorned onto them. I'm looking at you, Suez. For Battlefield 5, the Airborne game mode, the Final Stand game mode, and 64-player Frontlines only exist within the Grand Operations experience. Airborne is the starting introduction mode, and Final Stand exists only as a decider game mode, so if the teams are closely matched in performance over the first 3 days of a Grand Operation, then the 4th day is started, and Final Stand will be the game mode. On the Fjell 652 map, that doesn't support Frontlines at all, because the map is really not built to support a backwards and forwards tug of war. And some maps don't support Airborne or Final Stand, depending on the order that they're placed in a Grand Operation. So for example, the Netherlands Grand Operation starts on the Rotterdam map, and that supports Airborne, but it doesn't support Final Stand. Devastation, the second map in the operation, does support Final Stand, but it doesn't support Airborne. Next up, the launch maps, all 8 of them, are going to cover a wide spectrum of gameplay types and sizes. DICE created this super quick graph as an overview that shows the 8 maps and their tendencies, whether they lean towards infantry gameplay, vehicle gameplay, aerial gameplay, the cover density of the map, and the size of the map. And as you can see, there is a fairly good spread here. Fjell 652 supports infantry and aerial combat very heavily, with absolutely zero ground vehicle support, but by contrast, Hamada supports all 3 types of gameplay, but favours ground vehicles. Then you have maps like Arras, which sit somewhere in the middle and offer a mix of all 3 types in better proportion, but it lacks the dense cover of other maps. But as I found out the other day on Arras, there are plenty of fortification positions that you can build to get the cover that you need. Essentially, the 8 maps on offer will give any type of Battlefield player something that they like, with some maps being more specialised and other maps being more general. Something else that I learned from the Dev Talks episode, the Grand Operation structure that DICE is shipping with, where we have day 1, 2 and 3 as guaranteed days and the 4th being the decider, that's not the only structure that DICE can work with. And the game modes supported on different days, those can be swapped in and out for each other. The control DICE has over the Grand Operations experience is much deeper than what it was in Battlefield 1, and it doesn't require as much work to change things either. Most ground operations will start with Airborne, move on to Breakthrough, have a third mode like Conquest or Frontlines, and then the Decider mode is Final Stand. That's the kind of structure that DICE is shipping with. That can all be changed if DICE wants to do that. It also means that they can create very different experiences within the same ground operation. So, for example, if DICE wanted to change the Norwegian landing into a tank assault, they could swap out Airborne for Breakthrough, up the number of vehicle spawns, and change the experience entirely, which is awesome and could make for some really interesting gameplay. And likely, as part of the Tides of War, we're going to see DICE experiment with different modifiers, different game modes, and structures to create different experiences. Valerian, one of the devs in the video, actually said if DICE wanted to, they could create an operation which is 7 days long, and each day was domination on a different map. Or they could turn it into a pure Frontlines operation, so really, the possibilities are endless. And David Sirlin confirmed as well that as more game modes are added to Battlefield 5 through the Tides of War, they could end up in grand operations as well, which is awesome to hear. Another detail that was released in the Dev Talks video is about the destruction on certain maps. Lots of maps in the game can be completely transformed with the destruction engine. Now, of course, we already know that Battlefield games are famed for their destruction engine, but Ludwig, the level designer for the Twisted Steel map, he showed off some footage before and after the destruction on that map, and the difference is just insane. Now, obviously, this shows 100% destruction, which is unlikely to ever be the case, because gameplay is not so cut and dry in a live multiplayer match, but you will notice some areas become much more open as the match moves forwards, and on Twisted Steel, you're probably going to notice that more so than on others. It is quite a wide open map, and really the only elevation that you've got is the bridge running through the middle, and everything else happens in the marshlands around the outside of it. And sticking with the theme of destruction, David Sirlin said that he'd like to see maps that are much more scaled down and show off some indoor destruction, much like DICE did with the Close Quarters DLC in Battlefield 3 over 7 years ago. Those maps featured something called micro-destruction at the time, and it made for some very interesting gameplay moments. Despite the DLC being criticised before it was released for scaling down the massive Battlefield combat palette into basically pure infantry gameplay, I'd argue that some of those maps were the best for infantry combat, and they brought a brand new style of gameplay to the franchise. The first 3 chapters of the Tides of War are heavily influenced by vehicle gameplay, and that's because they're representing the early stages of World War II, where the Blitzkrieg was literally pushing across Western Europe and forcing the Allies into a massive retreat. So, David Sirlin's comments about smaller maps, more infantry gameplay, and indoor destruction will probably be music to the ears of infantry players out there who are looking for something like that in Battlefield 5. But judging on that graph that I showed you earlier, there should be a few maps that heavily favour infantry play in the base offering as well. And lastly for today, I know I said I was going to be releasing new gameplay on November the 8th, but I've been able to get access to a couple of new gameplay snippets here to show you. These were released by Dan Mitri, Global Community Manager for the Battlefield franchise, last night on social media. This one is from Twisted Steel. It shows Grizzle flying a Spitfire down the bridge on the Twisted Steel map, proving that you can in fact do what Ludwig, the level designer, hoped players would do, and these clips here from Stod proving that he's just a great recon Battlefield player. As I said at the start of the video, however, I'll be releasing more gameplay footage in just a day or so, some more long-form content, so that you guys can get a proper look at what Battlefield 5 is going to feel like at launch. And of course, I'm releasing that gameplay just 1 day before the game goes live on November 9th for Origin Access Premier subscribers. So, there you have it. That's pretty much my last news video on Battlefield 5 before release. It's been a rollercoaster ride, lots of up and downs along the way, but I'm so glad that on Friday, when the game finally opens up, that we can just play it. I'm excited to get a good chance to play the game extensively, experience all of the maps, the weapons, the gunplay, the game modes, and everything really that the game has to offer, rather than talking about things or simply complaining that the marketing campaign has been awful. Honestly, I'm fed up of complaining now. I just want to play the game because, having played it a few days ago, it does feel really, really good. Thanks very much for watching this video though. Make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications switched on so you don't miss any of my future Battlefield 5 videos. We're nearly at launch. There's going to be a video every day on my channel for quite a significant period of time. Thank you for watching today. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.